So the final harvest began a day early. For those who know me, November 2nd is usually when we start our final harvest, or the end of the winter findings. Final harvest is not the last root you dig out of the garden or the last apple that you pull off the tree. Final harvest is after you have done all your harvesting of your plants. Basically, you find out how much food you have stored for the winter, and you tally up how much you'll need, and then you have to do the butchering, and you have to butcher down to what you can feed. So if you can only feed 6 cows and you've got 8 cows, you have to butcher 2 of them, and the reason for that is if you don't, all 8 of them will starve to death. So you have to, Mother Nature knows what she's doing. Basically, only 1 in 4 bear cubs survive to the next year. Because Mother Nature doesn't have enough to feed them all, and only 1 in I think it's like 14 wolf pups will survive till the next year. Deer is horrible. It's like 1 in 20 because they're a prey species. Will survive till the next year, and nature does this. She puts out all these animals so that only the strongest survive. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but that's what it is. The strong ones will survive, carry on, and make the next generation stronger. So if you're going to take on the role of nature, this means you're going to have to be able to put down or butcher the animals that you can't feed. You can't sit there and say, oh, I love all the animals, I can only feed 6 of them, but I'm going to try to get them all through. No, what you'll do is you'll lose all 8 of them. So we began early. I am also a hunter, and this will probably lose me a lot of people on Facebook and such like that, but I'm sorry. I am a hunter. I hunt deer and waterfowl, mainly, some upland birds. Anyway, and I did take a deer yesterday, butchered it last night, and got the bones going into a broth. And basically what we do is all the bones except, I no longer put any of the head, like brain or anything like that, or the spinal column, because here in Wisconsin we have a disease called CWD, or chronic wasting disease. It's very similar to mad cow disease, except it affects deer. But every other that, we stick all the bones. This is a rib. This one's all ribs here. I've got several other bones that are going in another one. It's okay, guys. So we basically, I roasted them for about an hour. You can roast them for several hours if you want. Then I put them in a pot, and if you kind of look on the side, let's see if I can see a spot where there isn't steam. You can see that the water was way up to here, and we put a few splashes of vinegar in there to help dissolve a little bit of the bone to get the calcium into the broth. And you won't even, if you're thinking, oh, I don't like the taste of vinegar, you won't even get that flavor in there. It cooks out quite quickly, but it also helps dissolve a little bit of the bone, put a little bit of calcium into your broth. Then basically when you're cooking, chopping up your vegetables and things like that, if you don't have chickens or anything like that, you should save a little bit of it. You know, like the tops that you don't want, your carrot tops or your celery that you don't want. You know, you keep it all into a bucket that I usually freeze because I don't need the texture. And then when I need, like when I'm cooking broth or something like that, I throw in all of those carrot tops, and that's what I got in here. I got celery leaves and carrot tops and leftover onions. You know, if you cooked a meal and it only required half an onion, then the other half maybe it's tossed into your freezer, you know, into your vegetable frozen part. And like I said, I chip off a chunk of that and throw it in here because we won't be eating those. We're going to drain those all out. And this has been going for probably about 12 hours or so, the bones and everything, and we've pretty much taken what we can from them. So I'm going to strain them, and I've got my canning jars here. I'm going to can them up. I think I'm going to get I'm hoping for 7 quarts. And we're going to can this out and get this going onto the shelves so that we have stock for soups. And I'll talk about that as I'm doing it. So I'm going to get this, I'm going to just strain it out of this thing and get into another thing because I got to get it back up to boiling. So we're on to that. I'll be back in a little bit. Basically, you can see that we just put it through a strainer. And we are dealing with the rib cage of a deer here. So this is all the ribs off of, we basically just cut them right off the backbone. So there's where they were cut right off. And then, like I said, I roasted them for an hour. You can roast them for several hours with ribs. With the leg bones, I'll roast them a little bit longer. That's got the good soup flavoring to it. Ribs don't have as much, so they don't need as, they're a thinner bone, so they don't need quite as much roasting. And then I put them into a big pot of water because you're going to basically half the water. So I put them in my big 5-gallon soup pot anyway, and put probably about 4 gallons of water in with them. And then now we're down to about 2 gallons of stock. And so anyway, you're going to about half your water. So anyway, and then I throw in a few tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. I don't really measure. And then basically from here, the meat and everything is going to go out to the chickens. The bones we will put back out into the earth, and the coyotes and things like that will chew on them to get what little we still have left. So anyway, my windows are starting to really fog up. So I got to get going here because I'm putting a lot of steam into the air today. So anyway, I'm going to get going here and be back in a minute. It gets below freezing outside here now this time of the year in Wisconsin. I did for about 3 hours last night stick it outside on the front porch so it would freeze so I could take the fat off. And then it didn't freeze all the way, but it got very cold, and I could scrape the fat off. That fat you scrape off. Human beings, for the most part, don't like the flavor of that fat. So you can feed that to your chickens. They can use the fat, especially this time of the year. If you want, you can put it into an onion bag and feed it to your birds. The birds will love eating it. But if you didn't do that, you're going to have to, before you can it, you're going to want to get as much of the fat off as possible. As you can see, this has got a little bit of fat here in the corner, and I am going to take that off, especially if you're cooking venison. Venison just doesn't have the flavor that most human beings like. So I'm going to get that and scrape and skim that off, and then we're going to get this boiling again and get this going. I would can this, but as long as it's easy enough to get to, I'm going to actually go get a metal spoon, which will make it easier. But as long as it's easy enough to get to, I'm going to take it off. Okay, so I've got everything heating up. I've got my quart jars back here in boiling water, and I've got my pressure canner heating up here. I've skimmed off the fat off the top of the broth, and now I'm heating that back up. We want everything to be very, very hot when we're doing this. And I've got to get myself a scoop. I also am canning in quarts. If most people who know me know that I usually can in pints. The reason I do is because there's only 3 of us that live in this household, and for 3 of us to eat an entire quart of corn or green beans or something like that, it's not going to happen. We're just not going to eat that many. But we do eat lots of. We can eat, and for the most part, we would eat a quart of broth at one time because you just stick it into the soups. So we got everything heating up. I got everything boiling, and so basically I just take one out. And in my boiling water, again, this is because I live out in the country and I have very hard water. I put a little splash of vinegar into it. And as I take one out, I put one in. I haven't been canning for a week or so, so I got to get back into it here. And then I just fill this up, and I'm going to fill it up. I'd say close to where the blue of the funnel meets the top. That's about 1.5 inches. Maybe I'll go a little higher up than that because we're not putting anything extra in there. Most of your funnels nowadays that you buy have little increment marks on it, so that helps you out. They got little lines on the inside that kind of help you out. Then we wipe the rim. And then I got my little magnet. These things are not needed. You can always use your tongs. But I said I would never have one of these things because I said they were like for yuppies and newbies and things like that. And then the first time I tried it, I was like, oh hell, those newbies know what they're doing. I'm going to have one of those. The newbies know what they're doing. I'm going to follow in their footsteps. Don't shun away from new technology, even though this is just a magnet on a stick. So you're like going, that's not new technology. But it is kind of for the canner, because for the most part we use things, we use our tongs for everything. Anyway, so basically from here on out, I'm just filling jars and sticking it into the canner. Let's see. For this was a young buck, probably about a 2-year-old that I took. Nice 6-pointer. Young enough that we made steaks out of some of his meat, and still old enough to have the meat on his bones. So he's about, I shouldn't say 2 and a half, I'd say he's about 1.5 years. The old myth that however many points you have is how old he is. So like if he's got 6 points, he's 6 years old. Not around here. In Wisconsin, we have our deer, especially in our area, are very corn and alfalfa fed. They basically live off the same things that cattle do, which makes them taste darn good too. But because they have such high nutrition, they don't need to worry so much about, and because we have so few predators, anytime we get a predator for deer, everybody spazzes out and like, oh my god, we gotta go kill it, which is why of course we have a wolf hunt now, because everybody's thinking they can't have all these mean evil wolves out there with our poor deer, not realizing that this was nature's way of doing things. And because we don't have these predators, we have to, as human beings, kind of take over their job, which I think might be the way people like it. I am a hunter, have been a hunter since, well, came from a hunting family, so basically I was raised as a hunter, so as soon as, I think I was probably 13 when I started hunting. But I still believe that there's ethics in hunting. You certainly don't hunt for something you're not intending to eat. I don't quite understand people who just want to go out and kill a deer and then they're like, well, now what do I do with it, you know? And so our soup kitchens, because it's illegal to sell wild game meat. I don't know if that's a federal or a state law, but it is illegal to sell it. And so for a very long time, you couldn't do anything with it. If you didn't want to eat it, you basically dumped it on the side of the road. Well, now they did pass a law a while back that said that if you have meat you don't want to eat, you can donate it to soup kitchens, and some soup kitchens are opening up to the meat, you know, and they'll take the meat if it's already been processed. Around here, this was 90 pounds of meat that we took. Some steak, some roasts, a lot of ground venison, which the kids turn into jerky. That's basically what we do with our ground venison, turn it into jerky here. And, so that the kids can munch on it, and they have a little bit of something to, you know, we give them, they make their own, we make our own fruit roll-ups here, and we make our own jerky here. And this then, like I said, nothing goes to waste here, except we do put back to nature, we do put the spinal column and the brain back into nature, and the coyotes and everything will clean that up without a problem. But for us humans, we basically eat everything, including now we boil the bones. And bone broth is extremely nutritious. It's high in calcium, it's high in your minerals, and it's high in, you know, just it gives you that calories that you need for the winter. And we're not putting any salt into this. We will put salt into it when we cook it up as a soup, but we don't put any salt into it right now.